What is going on, everybody? I'm back with another podcast, another episode, and today put out on my Instagram story a few hours ago that I'm doing a bit of a Q&A here as draft season arrives, as we near the start of the NFL draft, and as free agency, finished up, wrapped up all the main moves, and yeah, I just want to do a quick Q&A. Usually do these on my Instagram story, but again, you're only limited to so many characters that you can put, and can't really go too in depth on a lot of questions. So, yeah, want to quickly come on here and do it. I have quite a few questions here, and yeah, again, thank you guys for supporting the opening podcast. Again, means a lot to me. Something that I've wanted to do for quite a while now, and I'm excited to keep on going and make this a consistent and main thing on my on my brand. I don't really know if I'd call it a brand, but on the Philly Birds Country just page and name, I'd like to add to it. Um, and yeah, this is a pretty big thing for me. So yeah, thank you for all the support on the first one, and back with another one. Quick Q&A. First question we got here from Priest Roche on Instagram. Who do you think we pick at 10? Now, in my last podcast, I kind of revealed what I think the Philadelphia Eagles will most likely do, and that is pick somebody that plays in the trenches, whether it's offensive line or defensive line. Time will tell. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my most likely prospect, in my opinion, from both offensive line and defensive line, just because I'm really not too sure who the Eagles will be selecting. Last year, we kind of had a sense, that they were really, really, really high on Jordan Davis and that they really wanted him, and they ended up trading up for him. And back a few years ago in 2020, it was well known that the Eagles liked Jalen Rager, and they did go on to select him 21st overall in 2020. It didn't shock anybody really, because we all knew the Eagles liked him. They liked what they thought he would bring to the offense. So we usually have a sense of what the Philadelphia Eagles will do, or a prospect they really like. We knew last year they really liked Trent McDuffie as well. And if the AJ Brown trade didn't materialize, it's believed that McDuffie would have been the pick at 18, which they ended up trading for Brown, of course. So I do think they'll go to the trenches. I think that's well known. And so for offensive line, I'll start there. I think the most likely prospect that they would target there is Peter Skoronski. Um, you know, just based off reports, he is coming to Philly, or already has. I'm not sure, for a top 30 visit. Um, and top 30 visits don't always mean that they're interested in a player. A lot of times it is to gather information. But Skoronski, to many teams, could be the Eagles potentially. He is the number one offensive lineman in this class. And I just think at this point in time, on April 10th, I'm recording this, that it is more likely that Peter Skoronski is there at 10 than Paris Johnson. And I don't think they take anybody else. Maybe Broderick Jones. He's a guy I like too, but there hasn't really been any reporting of Philadelphia Eagles being interested in Jones or bringing him in for a top 30 visit. And we're still 17 days out, so Eagles haven't revealed, or hasn't been revealed, all 30 of their top 30 visits. So time will tell, see if they bring him in. But at this point in time, I do believe if they were to go offensive line, it would be Peter Skoronski again. I said in my last podcast that I don't believe he'll end up being a tackle in the NFL. I think he'll be more of a guard when it's all said and done and he's all settled into the league. But regardless, you're getting a guy that can play, in theory, can play tackle at Northwestern, and will be the starting right guard in 2023 if he were to be drafted. Of course, can play guard. Very versatile. I did go in depth on him in my last podcast. So yeah, if they were to go offensive line at 10, and this is assuming they don't trade down. This is assuming if they were to stay put at 10. I think Peter Skoronski is the most likely pick if they were to go offensive line. And going into to the defensive line, I'm gonna go with Nolan Smith. This one was definitely tougher than offensive line just because all the all the prospects I went into defensively all have a chance to be there. Jalen Carter, we'll see. We'll see. We don't know. Good chance he's off the board. Visited Seattle, visited the Bears. Bears are interested. So, I don't know if I'd bet on excuse me, not Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter being there at 10, but Nolan Smith definitely a possibility. Lucas Van Ness definitely a possibility. Kalisha Cansey definitely a possibility. I don't know, some wild cards. Miles Murphy definitely a possibility. Um, I don't think he's worth a top 10 pick. I don't think he'll go anywhere really near the top 10, but maybe Brian Brzee, even though he'd be a more realistic option or target for pick 30. But I think Nolan Smith is the most likely, in my opinion, just because, recently, not not sure where he said, it could have been on a podcast, could have maybe somebody interviewed him. I'm not all that sure. He said he had a really, really good visit with the Eagles and that he really liked it, and that I think the most interesting part about it is he is a Georgia player. He's a Georgia kid. He was there with Nakobe Dean. He was there with Jordan Davis, and he touched on his relationship with both those players, who of course are on the Philadelphia Eagles today and will have bigger roles in 2023 than they did in their rookie seasons. So it'll be interesting there. How that impacts it, but I definitely think it could, because the Philadelphia Eagles have been very vocal about it publicly that they are interested and they like these guys from these big SEC schools. Of course, Jalen Hurts went to Alabama, but he came out from Oklahoma. Devontae Smith came out from Alabama. Landon Dickerson came out from Alabama. And last year they picked up both Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, of course. So, they like picking from these schools. It's something that I think they've fallen in love with. They didn't do it really at all in previous seasons, but now, this time and day looks like they're really interested, and they really like, picking from these big schools. So Nolan Smith goes there, and I think he provides just such an interesting way that he plays. He plays with that speed off the edge. It's so impressive to watch, and I really, really could see Sean Desai, the new defensive coordinator, liking that and really liking his play style. Of course, he had some notable names: Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn when he was with Chicago. Had um yeah, those guys in Chicago. Was with Seattle last season. Who they had, Uchenna Nwosu come off the edge. He had a really good season for them. So you know, he could very well like Nolan Smith. He could also very well like Lucas Van Ness. He could very well like Kalisha Cansey, although he plays more on the inside. But I just, at this point, if I were to make a prediction out of all these top defensive guys, I'd say Nolan Smith is the most likely guy. Now, it's no guarantee that he's there at 10. It's definitely no guarantee. You have Atlanta at 8, who definitely could go edge. Of course, they got Arnold Ebiketie last season, but other than that, there's really not much on that edge that really jumps out to you. And looks like they like Desmond Ridder. Looks like they're gonna go with him for 2023. And that defense was not very good last season, so you want to add to the edge, and who knows where they go. Maybe Tyree Wilson falls to them at 8, which probably would help the Eagles because they would probably end up just scooping him. And if they were to like a Lucas Van Ness and Nolan Smith, that would land one of them in their lap at 10. Um, so yeah, I think that those are the two most likely players. Now, if you wanted me to make a prediction on of those two players who's most likely, I'm kind of torn, but I might lead a little bit more towards Peter Skoronsky. Just off reports, just the sense that they're really interested in the guy, and that just going off their history. Of course, Jeff Stoutland definitely has a voice in what the Philadelphia Eagles do. He was the reason Jordan Mailata, which is this is obviously different. Jordan Mailata was a sixth, seventh round pick, and talking about the 10th overall pick in the NFL draft. But he has a voice, and if he likes a guy, he won't be afraid to call up Howie, call up the front office, and be vocal about that. So we'll see. I'm not. I wouldn't go to Vegas right now and put in $100 bet for Peter Skoronsky, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Again, still 17 days, so we'll see. But that's where I'm at. I do think they go trenches, and if I were to make a prediction right now, I'd say Peter Skoronsky. Whether it's trade back, but I feel like they'd be comfortable taking him 10th overall, just where they're at if he was there. So yeah, that's probably where I'm leaning at right now. Next question here from CMC Andrew _25. What do I think is most likely? A, the Eagles trade up from 10. B, they stay put at 10. Or C, they trade back. Right now, probably I think they stay put at 10 because just another thing you have to kind of take into account here is who's trading up. Like who, unless one of the four quarterbacks somehow make it to 10, one of them, which I don't find likely. I think all four of them will be taken very early in this draft. So, you know, I just don't see who you trade down with, because who would want to trade up? I'm just I'm not sure. I don't look down the board and see a team that would be eager to trade up, because really I don't see a team that is in desperate need of a prospect. Maybe if one of the cornerbacks are there, Devin Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez, a team like Pittsburgh or potentially even Washington could move up, but I just don't see a team that would be so eager to move up. So I don't think trading back, which does make sense for the Eagles. Obviously, they don't have many picks in this draft in the mid rounds. Pretty sure they have a first round pick or two first round picks. They have their second round pick, a third round pick, and then I don't think they have a pick till the seventh round, which is not usually how the Eagles go. I know last year they didn't have too many picks, but so trading down does make sense. But I don't see a team that you look at and go, oh yeah, they definitely want to move up. But I don't know, it all depends how things play out in the top 9 picks, but I just don't see them trading back as all that likely. Now, trading up is interesting. Chicago is the X factor here. Chicago, when you look at it, in my opinion, Chicago is either going to go three directions at pick 9. If they were to stay there, they can either pick Jalen Carter, Jackson Smith and Jigba, or Paris Johnson Jr. Those are the three most likely paths for them, in my opinion, if they were to stay at 9. And listen, they're the X factor here. If the Eagles feel and get the sense that, let's just say hypothetically, the Eagles want Jalen Carter, they really want him. They, they they have the pre-draft meeting with him. He showed, you know, just signs of that. I don't really know how to put this. He showed signs that, that the character issues are blown out of proportion. If they feel that way and they're like, okay, best football player in the draft here. We're sitting here at 8. Atlanta's on the board. Do we trade up and get this guy? Do we want him? If they felt that way, I think they would trade up. Let's say they got the sense Paris Johnson was going to be taken at 9 and they really liked him. No, I could see them do that. I could definitely see them moving up. But then again, you have to think about it. They don't have many picks in this draft. They don't. They have the 2 first-round picks, obviously. They have the second, the third, and then you don't have a pick till the 7th round. That's that's not a recipe for trading up. I don't think the Eagles are interested in giving up the small ammunition they have. Now they have many 2024 picks, but how much is that valued? I don't know. Uh, uh, Jimmy Kemsky, who I believe writes for The Voice, he put out something a few weeks ago that made total sense. His teams, they don't value future draft picks as much as they value current draft picks, especially when making draft day trades. So unless they really, really like a guy and they feel that guy, there's really no chance he gets a 10. I don't see them trading up. So I do think the most likely path, I know I'm going to drag that out a bit, I'm sorry, but I do think the most likely path is they stay put at 10 and select whoever they select, whoever they feel, just whoever they want, that's there. So I think that is the most likely path the Philadelphia Eagles go down, and that'll be interesting to see. But I just think the trading back and trading up, there's just too many roadblocks in doing that, or too many reasons that they wouldn't for me to be confident in predicting that. Another question here from J Doggy Dog. It's not draft related. Do you think Kenneth Gainwell will ever be a starter? Um, Kenny Gainwell is very interesting because he is currently and will be in 2023 their third down back. He was last season. He'll be the third down back again. Um, so in a way he is a starter, but I think I get what you mean. Is he gonna play all downs? Uh, as of now, I don't think he'll ever just be a full time like 3 down starter. Now, is it possible? Of course. He's progressed. I thought up until the playoffs it was sort of, I don't want to say disappointing, but he wasn't he wasn't like at that level that most people expected. And then in the playoffs, he turned up and he showed what he is, and he's a good football player. But as a 3 down starter, he's gonna need to show more at just up at this point. Will he ever? You know, I don't know if I'd predict that. I don't know if I'd be confident in saying he'll ever be a full 3 down running back for the Eagles. I think they brought in Rashad Penny in hopes of him being the first and second down, running back that gets the majority of the carries, because when he's healthy, he is a really good player. And the thing is he hasn't been healthy, so his whole career. But when he is on the field, he is very, very good and he's very, very efficient. And the Eagles most certainly felt comfortable. You know, they definitely feel comfortable that when he's on the field, he'll be the starter. I think that's the sense. It's the sense I get. That's the sense I think if you ask everybody, close to the Eagles, I think they'd agree. Um, but assuming Penny misses a few games, I think Gainwell and Scott will be the guys that get the majority of the carries. Now, Trey Sermon is interesting. Is a very interesting guy because at the combine, I believe it was the combine, Nick Sirianni talked very highly of him, and that's not out of the ordinary for Nick Sirianni to talk highly of his players. But at the end of the day, the Eagles put a claim on him, and they got him, and they inherited the rest of his contract. Um, and they didn't do that for nothing. They now he has 2 more years up on his deal, 2023 and 2024. So I believe they have some plans for Sermon to at least give him a shot here because you know would he have been claimed by another team? I'm sure. And I'm not saying the Eagles backed themselves in a corner here. They didn't. But Sermon is on the active roster. He has 2 more years on his rookie contract, and he was a third round pick. So, you know, he, I assume, at least in training camp, he'll get a shot because he wasn't here for training camp. They claimed him off waivers the day after cutdown day. Uh, so I'm sure he'll get a more fair shot in training camp this upcoming season. And if Penny were to miss games, which I think would be a safe bet that he at least misses a few. Obviously, I hope he doesn't. But just basing it off history, I assume he won't be out there all 17 games. But you know, assuming when he's out of the lineup, Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell will split carries. So going back to your question, I know I kind of drifted away, but going back to your question, will he ever be a starter? I wouldn't predict, or I wouldn't be confident in saying that he will end up being a three down back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, have I been wrong about players before? Absolutely. I was as wrong as can be about Jalen Hurts. Obviously, the superstar quarterback of this team. So, I'm not gonna come out here and say, oh, there's no shot because players can develop, and Kenny Gainwell does seem like a player that is very coachable and is very, you know, set on getting better as a football player. And so if he did become a three down back for his team, wouldn't shock me at all, really. But as of now, I wouldn't predict that or be confident in kind of putting that out there. But and it's possible. But as of now, if you want a yes or no answer here, I'd lean more towards no. But anything's possible. So who knows? But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on Kenny Gainwell at this moment in time. Next question here from Derek_123. Should we go after safeties Adrian Amos or John Johnson? Now, I'm kind of going to open up this question to just the safety position in general and more than these two guys. But, where are the Eagles going to add at safety? Of course, they've added two guys in free agency already, and Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds, both on cheap one-year deals. So, you don't really look at those two guys as the answer. I mean, Terrell Edmonds, he'll play, and he's certainly no scrub. Same with Justin Evans, whose career really has been derailed by injuries. But when he's been on the field, he hasn't been bad. He's been a solid player. But of course, the injuries have held him back. So, but are these the answers? Are these going to be are one of these two guys going to start alongside Reed Blankenship, who it seems like he will start there and be one of the pieces at safety in 2023 and potentially beyond. That's the hope, of course, but safety position is interesting. I assume they'll add in the draft, because I mean, let's go through the depth chart right now. Reed Blankenship, projected starter. I guess right now I'd say Terrell Edmonds would be the second starter. That's a solid player. Justin Evans, Kevon Wallace, Andre Chachere, who's a special teams guy, and yeah, I mean, Anthony Harris was on the practice squad, but I don't think they bring him back. He didn't play at all last season. So it's interesting what they'll do because they're going to add. This will not be the only guys that they add in Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds, but like the the names you're throwing out there, AJ Amos and John Johnson. Those are two guys that they definitely could add. John Johnson was really solid last season. He really was, and Amos, veteran player. He'll he'll be a starter if he were added, but I don't know if they'll go after one of these guys. You know, should we? It wouldn't be bad. They would be cheap deals, I assume. No, I'm sure they'll be cheap deals. Looking at the safety market, which has, I mean, blown mine everybody's minds by how trash the market has been in terms of how they're getting paid. Of course, Jesse Bates got paid $60 million a year, but other than that, C.J. Gardner Johnson, of course, only got up to $8 million. Von Bell didn't get paid as much as we thought. Um, so it has been a very stale market in terms of what these guys are being paid, and so these guys will be cheap guys that you can definitely go out and get. But I assume if they were to add one of these guys that you named or another player out there, um, I don't think it would be the end because they probably want to get some youth in the safety room because there is not much youth. You have Reed Blankenship, of course, but I don't think Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds, who are young players, I don't think they're long-term pieces. Um, you know, Kevon Wallace, I mean, up to this point, I think he's fighting for a roster spot come July, come the start of training camp. I think he's fighting for his life on the Eagles roster here, but I don't want to drift away from your question here. Should we add them? Sure. I think those would be nice additions. Adding one of those guys would be really nice additions. You add a veteran presence, kind of like an Anthony Harris from 2021. You compare alongside. At the time was Ronnie McLeod, but McLeod left up in this offseason, and Anthony Harris up until the last day of training camp, of course, when they went out and got C.J. Gardner Johnson. He was going to be a starter alongside Marcus Epps, who, of course, had a solid season, went out in free agency and got paid. So, that's what I'd compare it to, and that's something that they've done. They've added veteran players at the safety position. They were in on Tyrann Mathieu. They were in on Marcus Williams, who are, these guys are obviously, they're not, they're caliber above an Amos or a John Johnson. So, they're definitely different. And even last offseason, they added Jaquiski Tart, who unfortunately had injuries and issues in training camp and he just didn't make the roster. But, it's interesting there, kind of to, look at the guys they've added in previous off seasons and compare them to these guys that you have listed. And if you're asking me, you show me a contract, it's very cheap, 1 year, maybe even 2 year deal for one of these guys, and I'd say go out and get it. Of course, on Twitter, before they had signed him, I mentioned Terrell Edmonds. I also mentioned Adrian Amos, and on Instagram, I mentioned John Johnson. So I'd be interested in one of these guys being added, and I think they should add one of these players, give if the opportunity presents itself. And but going back to my earlier point, I don't think it should be all they do. I think they should go in the draft and add somebody in the mid rounds. And hey, guess what? Maybe even potentially at pick 30, maybe you can grab yourself a player like Brian Branch, who to me is more of a kind of nickel guy, but he can play a role that C.J. Gardner Johnson played. And of course, as we all know, C.J. Gardner Johnson was a really good, really big piece for the Philadelphia Eagles defense last season. So, should they add these guys? Yeah, I mean, one of these guys, you know, you go ahead and add one if you can. So, I'd definitely be open to that. I'm sure the Eagles, have explored all options at safety past the guys they've added because they wanted to re-sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They offered him a contract, and then he left, and he wanted to go test free agency and rightfully go test out free agency because he didn't know it was going to be this stale of a market, and nobody knew it was going to be this stale of a market. And then the Eagles, of course, pivoted to retaining James Bradbury and Darius Slay. But yeah, I think they'll end up showing interest if they haven't already in one of these guys, and it wouldn't shock me at all if one of them is brought in later in the offseason, kind of like James Bradbury was brought in May after the draft. So yeah, kind of sticking to your question, I think they should go after one of these guys in free agency. Of course, AJ Amos, Penn State guy. We are, but yeah, I think they should. I think they should definitely look at one of these guys as a veteran piece, veteran presence on the defense, and at a position of need. So yeah, I think they will end up being open to it if they haven't already, and I think they'll end up going after, and I think it would be a great addition. Last question here today that I'm gonna do before I wrap things up here is from actually underscore Aiden. What do you think a Jalen Hurts contract extension will look like? How much money will he end up getting? And this is just something that I put together just from the reports that have been put out there in the recent days, recent weeks. I have a six-year contract extension that's up to $268.8 million. That rounds out to $44.85 million per season. I think this pays Jalen Hurts and also kind of gives the Eagles flexibility to build a team going forward. Obviously, a little cheaper in the annual value than probably guys like Burrow or Herbert are going to get, but that's because corner reports that they want to work out here kind of a Patrick Mahomes-like deal. Now, I don't think he's going to get $10 million, and but I do think you bump up the years a little bit, and you were able to bring down the annual value, bring down the cap hit per season. I'm sure it'll be structured differently to where there's a little bit more money, and then there's a year where his cap hits like up north of like $55-60 million a year, which will end up being restructured. But it's hard to gauge, you know, what a Howie Roseman contract extension will look like. But obviously, it's a little bit different because this is your franchise quarterback. This is a contract that is bigger than most that you're gonna have to sort out here. So, it's a contract extension is on the way. It'll be here very soon. Um, but that's something that I would predict. I would predict you know, contract in this realm of $268 million over six years. Whether it's 5, 6, 7, maybe it's up the money a little bit. But he proved that he is worth more than $44.8 million. Kind of maybe some bias in this projection that he's going to take a little less, but he deserves that money because he proved that he is a guy that can win you the damn Super Bowl. And obviously, I don't want to touch on this past Super Bowl too much. It's a touchy subject among Eagles fans because obviously, lost in a very heartbreaking way. But if you want to look at the bright side of that game, Jalen Hurts proved what he is, and that is an undoubtedly, no argument needed. He is a franchise superstar quarterback in the NFL, and he is going to get paid like one, and he deserves it. And obviously, his agent Nicole Lynn and his team, they're gonna want to work something out that pays Jalen Hurts as much as they can. Maybe Jalen Hurts is kind of, giving them like a kind of a warning or just a note that he may want more money on the table for the Eagles to build a team, but he's gonna get paid again. He deserves it. Superstar quarterback in this league. I think undoubtedly top five. I don't see a scenario where you can name five quarterbacks better than him at the moment. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting to see. I think it'll be something in this range. maybe give or take some more years, give or take some more money on the annual value, more money overall. But yeah, that'll wrap things up for today. A little Q&A here. Ran a little bit longer than I wanted to. I think I spent a little more time on each question than I wanted to. Uh, you know, kind of lost me some time here. But yeah, that'll wrap things up here. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, like and subscribe. More will definitely be on the way. But yeah, again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.